Hi, welcome everyone to New York Comic Con 2019. This is my part 2 interview with Declan Shalvey. I just did this 3 years later.
An epic years in the making.
It's going to be a long saga. The third one's going to be the best one, I promise. How's your convention going, Declan?
Good, been very good. This show's always good, but sometimes we quiet, sometimes it's going to be too busy, but it's just the right amount of busy to not drive you insane.
Is it better than the Limerick Comic Con?
There is not a Limerick Comic Con. There once was a convention in Limerick, and it was not up to the scale. We just put it that way.
That was my attempt at a transition to talk about a flawless transition to talk about Savage Town.
Oh God, I'm blinded by how amazing that was.
This professionalism is off the charts.
It really, really is. But speaking of Savage Town.
That was, if I'm not mistaken, that was your first major foray into writing, correct?
Yeah, I wrote a Deadpool vs. Old Man Logan around the same. Well, it came out not too far apart, but I'd been working on that for a long, long, long time. So it was my first. I think I wrote and drew a Nick Fury story for Marvel, but that was about maybe 60 pages. But this is the first, it was a 130-page, proper, big, epic story. So yeah, it was me trying to do everything I've been wanting to do for a long time.
For those of you that don't know, Savage Town is Declan's image book about Jimmy Savage in Limerick City trying to make an honest living between two bigger companies.
Sure.
Companies.
Or criminal enterprises.
Yeah. Criminal enterprises. How challenging was that for you to actually create this from scratch as a first-time major writer?
I mean, it was tough. I mean, having worked with Warren and Jordy on Injection, it was very empowering to just do your own thing. And once I realized, well, maybe I could do this, because Warren's making TV shows and Jordy's working on Batman or whatever. They were both doing amazing stuff, and this is the one thing I was doing. And I realized, well, I can't draw anything else, but I could. I've enough I've been in the industry long enough that enough people know who I am that I could maybe get something made. And try it, and then I made it, and we pitched it, and it got approved, and then we did it, and it was a big effort, but it was very empowering at the same time to just make something from scratch. That was not all me, because Phil Barrett, the artist, put so much into it, but it was interesting to not to be the person who gets given the idea to develop, because I literally had the idea and gave that over to develop. It was interesting to see from the other side.
Right, Phil did an excellent job on that book.
Yeah,
one Phil to another, he did hats off, as it were. What made you decide to work with another artist instead of doing illustrations yourself?
It was just, a lot of it was just, I was drawing Injection, and Injection's what pays the bills effectively, so I couldn't stop that and risk. Well, one, it would be very irresponsible of me to stop doing that for just another creative endeavor, if it wasn't a proper job. That's one thing, but just to do something that may not even make money would be weird. But also, I was a big fan of Phil Barrett's work. Phil's been a mainstay of the Irish comics industry, or small press, and I wanted to see him do a graphic novel, and he hadn't. He'd done zines and one shots and stuff, but I wanted a Phil Barrett graphic novel, so I wrote one for him.
That's incredible. Speaking of writing it for him, were there challenges in dictating scripts to him, having done a lot of illustration work in your own career? Were there any kind of unique challenges of now writing for another artist?
Yeah, because I was worried I'd over direct it, so I made sure that my sense of pacing and when I'm drawing stuff is different to Phil's. Phil's got a higher page count. He's more of a cartoonist than I am as well, which is in that he's more of an aptitude for, the sense of storytelling. He'll do all these small bits that I maybe wouldn't do, and he's such good with character in a way that I'm not. So I wanted to give him the room to be able to put more of him into it. So I think I wrote it roughly 5 panels a page, whatever, but gave him space to add more if he wanted to, and he tended to do that too. And but also most of the time it's just letting somebody good just do their thing. I gave him everything that I was looking for, handed it over, and he just gave me so much back that he actually gave me. We were messing around at one stage, and he, just as a warm up, wrote and drew this kind of 2-page scene, and I'm like, this is great. We should put this in the book. He's like, no, it's not good enough. So I took that scene and I rewrote it for him to redraw into the scene because it was great. So
that sounds like a really healthy collaboration.
Yeah, it really was. Like, and also I wanted to write it all ahead of time, but in the end I was writing in chapters, kind of like single issues the way he was ahead, and I found myself writing towards the stuff he was drawing because I'd love these characters. I want to see what they were like, so I started to lean into those characters, whereas in my mind originally I wasn't. So I was very much responding to what Phil was putting on the page.
I wonder if there are opportunities to do more, create side by side, because oftentimes you'll hear about art's done first and then writing, like with the Marvel method or whatever, or a full script and the artist illustrates the script.
Yeah.
Is that something that would interest you, or is that way too cumbersome?
Doing which the
I'm saying doing illustrations and writing relatively side by side, even though obviously it takes much longer to draw.
Sure.
Is that maybe that's not economically feasible, but you described how in him doing the art, you were able to rewrite things around it.
Yeah.
So that in that sense, I'm saying it sounds like a really good collaboration.
No, it was. I mean, it's different. Say Warren writes scripts and I just draw them, basically.
Yeah, right.
Like it's not the most we don't have discussions all night thinking about the characters. Like he has it all there, and I know what I'm doing. If I have a question, I'll ask him, and it's done. Whereas with Phil, but then again, I don't know how Warren writes after he sees what I'm doing. You know what I mean? I don't know if he affects it. I have no idea because I'm totally segregated from his sense of the process. It's tough to maintain a schedule, to be working just a little bit ahead of somebody, and it can lead to some problems. It's better to have it all done ahead of time, but it is less collaborative because you're just giving somebody something and letting them changing it. I mean, it depends on the person too. Like I'm talking to somebody at the moment who wants his sense of storytelling is so much different than mine. There's no point for me to write it the way I normally write. I should try write it more Marvel style, which is not how I would want to write, but I think will suit the artist more. So it's interesting. It's just from a craft point of view, it's interesting to change things up like that.
Yeah, that was completely off the top because you made me kind of think about it just now. One thing I really do like about Phil's art in this is it feels almost surreal because you see that kind of cartoony background, but the characters in the book really pop, and I think that comes from your scripting. Are the characters from Savage Town, where do they come from? Are they based on real people or?
They are a little, but not specific people. More kind of like a lot of the stuff that kind of popped into the book was stuff that I would hear around me. A lot of phrases, nuance, kind of things like that. But just more kind of, not specific people, but the kind of feeling of people that I remember from my past. Like I said, it's a gangster story. I didn't go up around gangsters or anything, but Jimmy's home life, the house he lives in, is not that dissimilar from where I grew up. So there was a lot of stuff that was in my DNA that just kind of I was looking to get on the page, and that was the opportunity to do it. I didn't hang out with any gangsters in Limerick, so I didn't do that kind of research where I need to get in on the character. But I think their lives and the struggles are stuff that I understood and saw from when I was growing up.
I think you would have said that you didn't hang out with gangsters in Limerick, regardless if it was true or not.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess I wouldn't want that down on. I wouldn't have it on evidence, officer.
Obviously, I wanted to give Phil all his credit, and I just recently read your essay about giving artists their due credit.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. What was the impetus for that? What inspired that? Obviously, it's very pervasive in this industry.
Sure.
But where did that come from for you that it became a passion?
It was a friend of mine, Stephen Mooney here. He was doing a DC book, I remember at the time, and there was this article on CBR or something, and they used his artwork to talk about the book and never mentioned who drew the pages. And I remember just was like, what the fuck? Just put his name underneath it. You're talking about the book, you're using his artwork, put his name on it. It costs you nothing. All you gotta do is write his name. It's not more money, and it just gets his name out there more. Why is he doing that book if he doesn't get the exposure from it? And once I saw that, I just started noticing it more and more and more and more. So I had a hashtag called ArtCred where I was basically listing where I would see it, because you'd see it and then forget about it, and I just noticed just how pervasive it was. So it just kind of became more of an online conversation at the time, and Eric Stevenson, or was it Kat? I can't remember. Somebody at Image asked if I wanted to write an essay about it, which I think is better to do than like just mouthing off online. But I was pretty much just mouthing off online. But it was a good exercise to kind of like argue the point and why exactly it is a problem, and how there's, like it's not like artists are more important, but it's like they should be as important as writers, because it's a collaboration. They're co-authors, but they're very much not treated like that by press, by companies, and not ubiquitously so. It's just little small ways, and it just kind of gets bad habits kind of start to happen. So it's just a way of kind of snapping people on the wrist a little bit and go like, hey, remember to credit this person too, because they're also working on the book.
Why do you think artists don't really get the same due diligence and credit that a writer does? And in the essay, you point out an irony of it, because comic books are inherently a very visual medium.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? I mean, a director in a movie gets a lot of credit, and they didn't necessarily write the screenplay.
I think it's partly the authorial aspect that people love. People love authors. They like people like who are singing, real visionaries, and that happens to be like, how many people talk about Gaiman, or they achieve a kind of a cult status sometimes, and I think that happens with directors, that happens with writers, and because there is writing in comics, it happens with them too. I think they see them as the actual person who creates the work, from a lack of understanding of the process in some cases. Also, I think a lot of fans fancy themselves writers because they know they could never draw that stuff. So that's who they kind of look to. I think again, it's not one thing. I think it's a lot of small little things that kind of just accumulate into this overall negative habit.
There's not much of a market for my stick figures, personally.
Yeah, well, I haven't seen them. There's a market for those. I love those.
I can't take credit for these at all.
Okay.
Do you think there's a viable solution down the road for giving kind of equal credit?
Well, I mean, I guess I've kind of eased off on it because a lot of it was online, and there was a lot of online negativity, and it's kind of something I'm more aware of, how everybody's negative online. So trying to be more productive. Like if you looked at Savage Town, Phil's credited before me.
Yeah.
So that was just me just trying to put my money where my mouth was and go, I don't need to be the first person here. Phil did all the work anyway.
Yeah.
So as an experiment, and did it hurt sales? I don't know, but it doesn't hurt to try. And just I think if everybody just pushes the needle a little bit, it's not that hard. I don't think. You just got to check yourself now and then that you're not being an asshole.
That's very admirable.
Yeah.
I'm trying to,
No, I appreciate it, but I can't handle a sincere compliment.
So with Marvel, you've talked to me about how you are interested in doing Daredevil books.
Yeah.
Where's the love for that character come from? Because if there's one thing I would love to see you on,
I'd
Daredevil
love to do
book.
it. Well, I just did a one-pager for Marvel Comics when issue 1001, and that was just dream come true. It was Frank Miller and John Romita Jr.'s Man Without Fear.
Yeah.
Just changed me. I just love that. That book just hit me at a time. I was in school. I was like a teenager, and it just changed everything for me. And then all these amazing runs since the Brian Michael Bendis run, and the Assetti's run with Romita, all the Miller stuff. 80s. Like, it's just such. I feel like that's the book where there's more good stories out of that character than any of the other Marvel stuff. Not that there isn't any good stories, but they're very hit and miss. Daredevil has had signature run after signature run after signature run after signature run. So I'd love to be a part of that.
I've said that on the show many times.
Oh, really? Yeah.
There's no bad run on the character.
But even that, when Avengers comes out, what do you sell people when Avengers, the film, comes out? There's not a lot of Avengers storylines that you can go to. Like now with Infinity Gauntlet there is, but whereas Daredevil, there's so many. There's like 10 off the top of my head. I can name 10 of them.
Yeah, right.
Unlike say Spider-Man, which I love Spider-Man, but there's not as many signature tales like that.
They talk about like maybe a one-off graphic novel or something, or a specific story arc.
What was it? The one with The Last Hunt.
Yeah,
exactly. People mentioned that, but like that was the 80s. Why aren't there more signature Spider-Man stories like that? Not that there are. I think the Chip's just done it with Chip and Mark Bagley have just done it. See, I said to catch myself. With
#ArtCred.
Thank you very much. With Life Story.
Yeah.
I think that's I'd love to see more of those type of stuff. You know.
I would also like to see more of that stuff, and specifically from you.
Oh, well, someday.
Someday.
You know, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Is there anything you'd like to promote at this time?
No, not really. I'm working on a book that hasn't been announced yet. But I do have a graphic novel coming out next year, which is a follow-up to Savage Town.
Right.
It's an Irish crime horror story set in the Dublin Mountains, and it's out in April 2020.
Is there anything you could tell us about that book? Is Phil back on it?
No, it's a different artist. It's Gavin Fullerton. He worked on a book called Bags for Boom Studios this year. That came out this year. Really interesting artist. And it's coloured by Rebecca Nolte. So it's an entirely Irish team again. It's called Bog Bodies. And so basically two gangsters go out into the mountains to dump a body, and then one of the gangsters realises he's the one that's going to get dumped. And then hilarity ensues.
Oh, I can't wait to read it. We'll have to have you on the show to talk about it.
I think so.
Fantastic. Well, until next time, thanks for tuning in. I'm Phil. This is Declan. This is New York Comic Con, and this is the Comics Pals. Take care.